Well, welcome to all of you who have made it this far through Summer Institute. It's been a good couple of days. I'm glad to see a good number of people here today. I am Marty Olson. I work as a state assessment trainer in both CASAS and TABE. And I'm going to be doing your recertification training today. And I've got Linda Keller here, another trainer. Linda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Linda Keller. I work with Marty Olson on the training team and deliver both CASAS and TABE training, and also work with Metro North as their accountability person. Welcome.
Thanks, Linda. So I would ask that Penny has put, or Elizabeth has put, a Google form in the chat. And if you could just take a minute to complete that form, that lets us know who is here today. That way we can keep track of it. Basically, being certified CASAS and TABE is required for anybody who's dealing with the tests. And you have to do it every 5 years. So rather than doing a full implementation training, that's what this recertification training is for. But I would like to have you complete that form so that we have names of the people who are here with us today. Hi, Mark, how are you doing? So we will continue as people complete that form. Good to see. I can see some of you are completing the form, so great. I'm glad to see that. Thank you so much. So for today, I'm going to first turn off my video so that we save on our bandwidth. The objectives for today would be, first of all, just to review some updated information regarding both CASAS Life and Work and the CASAS Goals assessments. We're going to talk a little bit about best practices in administering the tests, and certainly talk about some tools that you can use as you target instruction so that you can help your students to learn more, increase their learning levels, and of course, that all-important level gain. And then for those of you who are here, you will be meeting that every 5 years recertification requirement. So first of all, this is a question some people do ask, why do we use these assessments? What are we doing this for? And there's really several main reasons that are the reason that we do this. First, it helps us to learn some basic information about where the student is as they enter our classroom. Also, we want to, once we know where they are, that's going to help us determine what's the best class placement for the student. Also, it helps us to provide or the test can provide guidance for the teacher then. They've learned a little bit about their student, they've got them in the right class, and then they can see what does the student need in order to move to the next level. It does establish a baseline for our post-testing. So once we know where they are, eventually we are going to need to post-test them. So this is the first test is the baseline. And then, of course, post-tests help the teacher to know, did the students learn what I wanted them to learn? Or do we need to do some more work? Are there things that still need to be covered? And certainly that all-important thing, accountability. We have to be accountable for the use of the funds that we've gotten from the sources. So, who can administer these assessments? Basically, any staff who've gone through a CASAS training with a certified trainer are eligible for assessments. You should go first through an implementation training the first time. After that, this training today is appropriate because we're going to give you updates and answer any questions that you might have as you have already been administering assessments. If you can't go to a training with one of the certified trainers here in Minnesota, you can also complete online modules on the CASAS website. And there's a where you can find those modules, and you can always contact me or Linda to help you access those modules. And then staff who've completed their every 5-year training, of course, need, their recertification training, also are eligible to administer the assessments. I want to talk a little bit about what CASAS has for our learners. First of all, for the ESL learners. These 3 tests that you see on the screen are approved through February 2nd, 2023. And that date is coming up. Now, the state of Minnesota has approved them through the end of the reporting year. So they will be eligible for reporting through the end of June next year. But these 3 tests, the beginning literacy, the life and work reading 80 series, and the life and work listening 980 series, will be expiring. So we'll have to talk about what's going to be available once these however, just think about what or who is eligible to be given that life and work test. It's still eligible for reporting, so who's eligible to be given the test? It's only appropriate for learners for whom English is not their first language. It's only appropriate for English language learners who have scored less than 236 on a previous life and work test. It's only once an English language learner scores 236 or more on the life and work, then if that's a post-test, they'll be marked completed ESL, but then they're no longer eligible for the CASAS life and work tests. And so those learners must move on to the CASAS goals or table 11 and 12, depending upon which tests you're using at your sites. So what are we going to do to replace the CASAS life and work tests and the beginning literacy? It will be a new test series called STEPS, and it will be specifically for ESL learners. There will be a reading STEPS test and a listening STEPS test. They will have 5 levels. So the lowest level in the STEPS test is going to be incorporate the skills that you would have had in that beginning literacy series that they had, and which we've all said for several years, it's a little bit outdated. So there will be 5 levels. This series is, or both of these will be aligned to the English language proficiency standards. So those are specifically for EL students. There will be increased focus on content standards together with the competencies, so making them a better, more proficient learner. And there will be similar item types as in reading goals. So if you've been using goals, you're going to note some things about the STEPS tests that will be similar. Currently, CASAS is completing their final form studies on these tests, and they'll be submitted in October. So the deadline is coming up, but we just have to wait. They'll be submitting the tests, and then we have to wait after that for them to be approved. We don't know how long that will take. Sometimes it takes a few months, sometimes longer than that. So those things we'll keep you informed. As we get the information, we will definitely let you know what's going on. So CASAS also has assessments that are specifically for ABE learners. The reading CASAS goals is approved through February 5th of 2025. So that's got a little bit of time left on it. And they are also working on updating that test for submission within the next year or two. It is designed for learners for language and also English language learners, again, once they've earned a 236 or higher on that life and work test. There's also a math assessment, CASAS Goals Math, and it is approved through March 7th of 2023. So again, that test they're moving toward submitting that test for further approval. The CASAS Goals test, as I said, is only for English learners for whom English is their first language. And once an ELL scores 236 or higher, they need to be transferred to the CASAS Goals test immediately. Once they score that 236 on the life and work, they're marked completed ESL, so they do need to have a new test. CASAS Goals Math is the only CASAS test that's currently approved for math for reporting purposes. So any learner who takes that math test, and they could be an English language learner, but their math score will be an ABE score. And learners could have an EFL, which is educational functioning level, perhaps ESL in reading and ABE in math, and that's okay.
There is a question in the chat, Marty. This is Linda. Penny is asking does that mean that programs will not be able to test in July, August, or October through October of 2023?
No. This test, we're hoping that there will be tests that will be approved. They're being submitted this year, 2022, and they currently are approved through February of 2023, and then the state of Minnesota has actually approved them through the end of June 2023. So you'll be able to get those current tests will be useful through the end of 2023, June of 2023. What happens after that, we don't know yet. I can't tell you because I don't know. If the feds approve tests quickly, they may be approved, say, by the end of this year, meaning 2022, and perhaps we'll be able to get a hold of them by next, say, spring, and be able to make that transition. If the feds take longer to approve tests, then the other thing that they have done in the past is to extend the approval and they can do that too. So we don't know yet what's going to happen. We've seen approvals happen quickly. We've seen approvals take a long time. So we will just have to wait on that, and we'll keep you informed. Does that help, Penny? There will be a test. I guess basically the short answer to your question is there will be a test. We just don't know which one it will be.
Exactly.
Yes, I think what I'm asking is for programs that run in, through summer, if they would have an opportunity to post-test in July, and I think what I'm hearing is maybe the answer at the moment is it'll depend on the feds. Is that correct?
Yes, it will. So they
Okay.
will definitely be able to go through June with the current
Right.
tests. The hope would be there will be new tests approved and by July.
Right. Okay.
But
Thank you.
Yep, they have to allow time for those tests to be printed. I mean, if you're doing testing online, that's one thing, but not everybody is. So there has to be, things need to be printed, and they don't print a lot of tests until they know that they've been approved.
Got it.
Okay. So all the tests that are going to expire in 2023 will be submitted in this year in October. I think it's actually October 1st, but they will be submitted in October of 2022. So all CASAS assessments do measure academic skills, and they do so in the context of common life and work scenarios. You can do a lot of group or individual administration because the timing is very similar with all the tests, either an hour to an hour and 15 minutes for some of the newer tests, the goals tests. You can prepare your students to take the test by going through sample test items, which are available for you on the CASAS website. And those are free, no cost to do those. The paper test booklets, of course, are reusable. And so that's certainly cost effective. And then e-tests are also, there's some real, and we certainly are encouraging people to consider using e-tests, because the test is definitely going to be given the same time every single time. It does eventually, maybe not right at the beginning, but eventually it'll reduce your staff time. And the CASAS e-tests run from 235 to 345 per test, and that just depends upon how many you purchase. The more you purchase, the less it is per test. CASAS is a standardized test. And that means that the test is always given the same way, and it's always scored the same way. So that is up to the person who's giving the test to ensure that they are always giving the test the same way, using the same script every time with the students. Even if they've had tests before, you should use that same script to make it familiar, to make it comfortable for them. You should always use the proper timing. Read the script verbatim, which I said already. You can help students with their demographics. You can't go through test questions, but you can review the practice items with the learners so that they are comfortable with how the test is going to work. They can't use cell phones, they can't use translators or dictionaries, anything like that. Those need to be put away. You can't take breaks in the middle of a test. If a student has an emergency and leaves in the middle of the test, they will have to return and start over with a different form of that test. And probably, I always have found this is one of the hardest things, is not to review the test answers with the examinees. So often your students want to know, how did I do? And which ones did I get wrong? And how can I improve next time? So that's where they are thinking. And that's a good way to be thinking. However, we can't go over test questions with them. So you'll just have to say, well, you'll include information in instruction that's going to help them do better next time. The timing on the test is fairly uniform. The reading appraisal is 25 minutes. The listening appraisal is 30. And then for life and work, all of the levels are 60 minutes each. The listening tests then vary because they're on a CD and they vary a little bit in length. But that will be pretty standard in each one. A couple questions. Is the restroom, will they need to start a different test when they return? That's a really hard one. Technically, they should be encouraged to go to the restroom prior to the test. The test is only an hour long, so hopefully that is good. If there's an issue and they really need to use the bathroom in the middle of a test, technically they would have to start a different test when they return. That would follow standardized testing rules. And question about going over answers on tape, same as with CASAS, no. You can't go over the answers in the test. Because it's a standardized test, because others may see those same questions, you can't tell students the correct answer, because of the standardization of the test. CASAS goals has a little bit different timing. The appraisal is 30 minutes. However, the level test, the level A, is 60 minutes. The other three are 75. And math goals, same thing. The lower level is 60 and the upper level is 75. So timing is very uniform within the tests to test several people at one time. So this is just kind of a review of what we've gone over. These are the currently approved tests for reporting purposes. You can see the first two columns, well, the second and third column actually, are the life and work, reading and listening, and they are for only ESL. And the goals then is for ABE or upper level ESL, and then math, all learners. If you're giving them a math, that is the only approved math test for CASAS. When you are giving the test, CASAS, of course, will sell you answer sheets. And those are fine. You can certainly use those, or you can make your own. Or there are several programs that have created their an answer sheet and shared them with us. So this is one of those created by Wendy Herr when she was at Hopkins. And you can find this on the MNABE assessment website, and that has been put in the chat, so you can see that. There are several others that are also on that page that you can choose the one that works best for your program. We've always, talked some about valid scores. And we have to pay attention to the score that our student gets. Is it a valid score? And basically, CASAS in the life and work test has made it really easy for us. because they put these dotted lines. So anything between those two dotted lines in this range is considered valid, or they say accurate. That's great. If it's, so then you know if it's below here, wrong in this case, or right, I mean, then you can't report that in SID. So you're going to have to retest immediately with an easier test. On the other hand, if a learner scores too high, what you're going to realize is this test was too easy for them, and they most likely need to retest with a higher level. The one time you might use this higher score is if this person was taking a post-test. So say they, scored a 215 or 216 on their pretest. So this was an appropriate post-test. They still had a ways to go to get up here. So they took it and say they scored a 230. Okay, you can't report 230, but you can report the 229, the highest valid score, because they definitely learned, they definitely improved their score, and I would not want to throw that out in that case. Okay. Goals has done something a little bit different with how they've arranged their valid score charts, and I do really like what they did. You'll see again, they've got these scores that there is no score because the student got too few correct. So again, you still need to retest immediately. The valid scores are here in the middle. Anything below and up with up to this 227 and even higher. So here you can see up to 238. So don't look at just between these lines. You can go a little bit higher. The only scores that are not considered valid would be the scores with the diamonds. However, you'll notice that the top score with in this that is valid is the same. So what they've done is they're not even giving higher scores. 238 is the highest you can score on this particular test. The other thing that I really like that they've done is they've shown the levels. So if a person scores in this 210 to 216, you know they're an NRS level 2. If they score between 217 and 227, they're a level 3. If they score above that, they are scoring in the level 4. So it's very helpful to see, can they, in one way, you can say, if I give this student this, say a 905, since this was a 906, if I'm going to give them a 905 as the post-test, first I need to know what they scored previously. If they scored 227 or lower, then they're eligible to get into the level 4. However, if they scored on their pretest 228 or higher, you know that they're not going to be able to get a level gain on level C. So you're going to have to move to the level D in order for them to have the opportunity to get a level gain. Another thing that CASAS has done with the new reading goals is they did do a grade equivalent chart. What's nice about this, particularly if you're working on a P2P grant, working with Career Force, they in their system need to have a grade level to enroll a student. So it's been helpful that CASAS has this chart. We still like to focus on the scale scores, but the grade level is something that some people find helpful as they're looking at their students, and certainly in a career force program situation. This chart has so much information on it. Sometimes I don't even know where to start. First of all, up you can see here, these are CASAS competencies. The CASAS competencies are tied to each of the questions. So these are the item numbers in this row, and the competencies are tied to them. So there's a CASAS competency chart that, or document, that you can print from the website, the CASAS website, and you can look up what is, in this case, 5.6.1. You can look it up and you could find out what this question is related to as far as a competency. Also, you'll see that there's these dots around in this area. So this number 1 is related to 5.6.1, and also there's a dot in this column. So you'll see that this standard is addressed within question number 1. So there's a lot of information on this chart. There's my arrow for the competencies. Then also CASAS had developed their own standards prior to the CCR standards coming out, and then they have updated them, but they are definitely very comparable to the CCR standards. So if you look at some of the standards here, reading 2.3 talks about a range of general academic, technical, and domain-specific phrases. Well, that deals with CCR anchor number 4. So again, very similar. So as we look at that, let's look at another one here, reading 3.1.2, identifying key details and citing evidence from the text. Look at all the dots that are tied to that. So there's a lot of questions that are looking at the question of key details and citing evidence. And finally, there's others here. I'm not going to go through each of these individually, but all of these anchors, the CCR anchors, are also covered by the CASAS reading standards. Another thing that they have created is the blueprint. And this blueprint, this one happens to be for level C, but it shows exactly what the types of things that are being covered at this level. So you'll see there's about 20% vocabulary in a level C test. A lot of reading comprehension, about 40%. And then also we're getting into the higher order reading skills. So those are all laid out, and well, this is only the first page, so we don't see the higher order, but it tells you more. This blueprint tells you more about what is being covered in the test, so that you know what to fill in your classroom. Math goals also has the grade equivalent chart. So same thing. It's something that helps you, helps perhaps a partner to fill in a blank that they need to have. And they also have blueprints. And you'll see these things are tied to the CCR standards for math. If you're doing e-tests, you get even more information. So if you take a look at this, it's going to be all the basic information here that you get from a test, but then you can really drill down. In this case, how many consumer economics, community resources, employment, government, and law, how many of those were correct? The student apparently needs to have some information about employment because it seems like there was a lower percentage of things correct. It looks at task. In this case, students got some problem with articles, paragraphs. So reading those longer materials would be something the student needs to work with. And then it looks at vocabulary, reading comprehension, higher order. All of those things are drilled down in individual skills profile that you can get from TOPS Pro. And just more information here, again, about the student, how many items they got correct in each of the standards. So once you've done all the testing and then you've done the instruction, then we need to think about post-testing and what are we going to do with that? So first of all, obviously we have to wait at least 40 hours. Let me answer a question here. Where's the competencies chart? I'm on the website. I would type in the search CASAS competencies, and you should be able to come up with that document. If not, let me know and I can send you a copy, Elizabeth. So 40 hours, CASAS would say 70 to 100. Because obviously the more learning, the better a student is going to do on their post-test. But you should use the next assigned test chart and that's in your test administration manual, and that's going to help you determine the appropriate test. It's going to look like this. You look at what form they took previously, what their score was, and then over to the right will show you what is the appropriate test to give next. Remember, paired tests must also always be in the same modality. So you need to always have math to math, reading to reading, that sort of thing, listening to listening. And always think about, can a learner get a level gain? If not, you probably should go to the higher level as they suggest here. And here's the new chart for performance targets for Minnesota. And you'll notice that our targets have definitely gotten lower. And that's good for us. And hopefully that we can make those levels. You can see in the past, we have definitely. Over the last few years, it was 43%, 44%. So the feds have definitely lowered them due to the COVID situation. And here's the cost of purchasing. You'll see that the more you purchase, if you're doing e-tests, the less expensive they are. And of course, paper-based tests, they don't do that because those are reusable. Let's look at this. Orlando's an English language learner. He registered for your program on May 1st. He was given a CASAS Life and Work test level C, and he scored a 228. He attended for 26 hours in May and June. Later in July, after 15 additional hours, Orlando was given a CASAS Goals level C, and he scores 236. So the first question, is this a level gain? If you want to type your answer in the chat, I'll just give you a minute to do that.
And
Did Orlando earn a level gain?
we're at a 5-minute warning too, Marty, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I just looked at the clock and I realized, oh my goodness, we're getting there. So is this a level gain? Does anybody have the answer for that? Okay, well, the answer here, I'm not getting any, so I'm going to tell you, this is not a level gain because they were two different test series. So here we had life and work, here we had goals. So it has to be the same test series. And how could he get a level gain? If he had previously a 228 on life and work, what you should do is give him a life and work level, and he could score 236 or higher. And if he does that, he will be marked as complete, earn a level completed, a completed ESL. So that's the way he could get a level gain. So we went back, we gave him the right test, the life and work, and he did score a 236. So he got the level completion and he continued to attend class. Later in the summer, you get an error message that indicates you can't enter any additional hours for Orlando. What happened? Why can't you enter any more hours? Due to time, I'm going to give you the answer. He already has a level completion, but then he basically needs to take that life and work series, not take the life and work, sorry, take the goals. If he takes the goals test, then that would be the appropriate test, and he would get a level on the goals test. So make sure all advanced ESL students are pre-tested. If they're pre-tested in life and work, that they have the opportunity to post-test in life and work. And they can continue to take the life and work until they score 236. I realize some programs switch to goals earlier, or they switch to TABE earlier, and that's fine. That's a program decision. But they can CASAS until they earn a 236, which would be on that level D test. And then check SID to ensure that the students have educational functioning levels in 2023. If they don't, they may have a pretest that's too old, or they may need to be tested immediately with CASAS goals. So check, everything switched over as of July 1st. The look back date became July 1st of 2021. So make sure as you're coming back to class, if you had class or didn't have class the last month or so, make sure that your students all do have levels. I'm going to go through to the end here and ask if there are any questions. I see there was a mistake in the initial Google form.
We had the same issue that we ran into yesterday, but we figured it out, and we see people filling them out now, and I have responses, which is great. So if you haven't already filled that form out, please click on the link that Elizabeth just provided before
Okay.
you leave to get CEUs. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any, okay, the competent, I'm not sure, Elizabeth, what you want for the competencies. Oh, you want the CASAS competencies, the booklet.
Oh, I
can
thought
do
it was
that.
just a chart.
That's why I'm asking what you're asking for.
Just that chart that you displayed in the presentation today.
Which one?
Depending on the
basic skills one?
it was that chart with way too much information, but depending
That's
on
okay. That's
what,
the CASAS. Yes. Okay. That would be the CASAS basic skills. I'll send you the link
appreciate that. Thank
to
you.
that. Yep.